to the How Could You podcast. I'm Lauren Tocci.
And I'm Ryan Tocci. And we're here to ask you, how are you going to be a revolutionary if you're such a traditionalist?
I actually think that we're going to come back to that quote.
Because
I think that is the central argument of a movie that seemingly is such a traditionalist, but really isn't. And I had a lot of notes about that, so I'm glad this is how we're starting off at the top of the pod.
I'm glad I could get us going right off the bat.
Well, welcome everyone. So this is the my birthday episode.
Yes! Happy birthday, Lauren!
Yay!
Or you can say that, happy birthday, Lauren, or if you write it on a card and put an exclamation, it's happy birthday, Lauren! So.
Some real big energy coming into this episode. So we'll get to that in a second, but we said we were going to do this, so this is hopefully a happy surprise mid-July while we've been taking our summer break.
Yeah, it's our one-off midsummer, midsummer. Less bears and flowers and tripping in this episode.
I didn't agree to any of the things you just said. So we're going to do Tossi's Takes, though, because we've been off for a little bit. We've seen some stuff. The summer movie season has begun. I'm putting some quotes. Yeah, it's upon us. I'm putting quotes around that because obviously it's very different. And obviously in the before times, I feel like summer movie season was like starting in March. So it would be like, oh, this is the start of summer releases, and it's like, we're at mid-spring, y'all. And then, you get a lot of heavy releases in May and June. But there's definitely been some new content out there.
Yeah, it's trickling out.
Yeah.
It's like we get one off, maybe a week gap in between.
I'm not minding it.
No, it's nice.
It helps to not divide my focus.
Great new content for movies we've been looking forward to about 4 years. So.
Exactly. So do you have a Tossi's Takes for this week?
I do, and ironically, as I just made that joke, I'm going to pick one that we just found out was going to be coming out only a few months ago. And mine would be the surrealist psychological thriller by my favorite George A. Romero, The Amusement Park.
Cool. So the podcast is about to get real depressing, everyone.
Listen, this is a movie that will not be for everyone, obviously.
No!
It is a very strange and very cool piece of filmmaking. It was made in 1973. What it was actually the Lutheran Service Society of Western Pennsylvania asked George A. Romero to make an educational film about elder abuse. And George did it in all his Romero way. It's about an hour long. And that is what it is about, but it is done in a very kind of, again, using the word trippy way, very kind of, it is a interesting piece of filmmaking. It feels like an art house piece of work.
Yeah, for sure.
It's its own thing. It takes you about 20 minutes to settle in to understand what's actually going on. The fun, interesting part about this is basically Romero did this film. It shows elder abuse in just this very real but kind of avant-garde way, all based around being inside of an amusement park, and it is strange and depressing and weirdly good. It's really cool. It got shelved because when they took a look at it, they were like, we are not airing this. Because it was supposed to air on TV, and it got shelved and got lost for many years. The Romero Foundation kind of unearthed it. Some people got involved, and Shudder actually just released it last month. And like I said, it's an hour. If you're a Romero fan, if you're a horror fan, if you're just a really interesting film, interesting film work, I say check it out.
Well, and I think your point is apropos in that even if you're not necessarily like a diehard Romero fan, it's a really interesting story, if nothing else. Like the fact that, you have this service kind of come to him and go like, hey, this is a big director from Pennsylvania. This might bring attention to this because of the fact it's got Romero's name attached to it. But what he does with it is mind-altering. It feels like the most disturbing episode of The Twilight Zone you've ever watched.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
It really does. And that's the thing. It's a nightmarish hellscape. And I think you could feasibly leave it and not know that it was necessarily a PSA.
No, I agree with you
there. But there's an intro portion of it that really like hammers the point home.
But I think that's the thing that people need to know about it if they don't, is that that's what it is. So if there's a little confusion on it, like it is supposed to be a PSA, like you said. Like, I mean, people need to know that going in, so you kind of understand. This wasn't made to be a horror movie. It was just made to have, effect. And it does. It stays with you. It affects you. You kind of leave when you're done, kind of mouth agape going, what did I just watch and why is it sunk into me? And now I'm very upset and disturbed.
And I will say it's a really good call to action film, because I think if you let it nestle in, it makes you think reflectively about the issue at hand. And then like additionally, you're like, oh, okay, I feel like I need to do something now. Like you leave going, what have I not been doing for my community that I need to be doing? Because honestly, it sinks into the bones in a weird way.
I think, you're hitting it really on the head. And the other thing is, like, you think that this was made in 1973, and everything that happens during it, you can go, oh, I understand. Like, still today. Yeah. That a lot of that's still going on, and it makes you kind of, check yourself a little bit and think about it. I think the scene that got me the most was the
food sequence?
No, I'm sorry. The mystic, the
oh
psychic.
Gosh, I hated that part.
Oh, the psychic, yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Anyone who's listening, because this is a birthday episode, if you're having any type of existential crisis about your age or your place in the world, don't watch that sequence. Yeah. When they go to the mystic's booth, peace out for 5 minutes, because it's gonna mess your head up.
This 2 young couple, what their futures hold, it's just like. Ugh. So anyway, glad I could start this episode off.
Well, because then, this is so depressing, but afterwards you're like, we need to write something up that we're never put in a separate home. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. Like, it'll mess you up. It'll mess you up a little bit.
It will, very much so. I just love the idea of this place going to George. Let's get that local boy, George Romero, the filmmaker, to make us a PSA. He'll make one, and then they get it and go, what?
What just happened?
This is way too disturbing.
And they're like, and we're here advocating for an end to the mistreatment of elders and in homes.
Yeah.
And even we're disturbed by this message. Like, it's a very, So, I mean, hey, check it out. Shudder, $5.99 a month. Really great.
Allegedly $56 a year. I don't know.
Allegedly. Can't ever find that plan. But
anyway, this is your birthday episode. I've now hijacked it and made everybody go, what? So let's get back to a little more fun. I have a feeling your Tossi's Takes is going to be a little more upbeat, a little more, bring us some life.
I literally feel so sad now just thinking about the amusement park. So my Tossi's Takes...
legitimately, it was good, though.
No, it's very good, yeah. So my Tossi's Takes is the phenomenal, the effervescent, the breath of fresh air that we all needed at the start of the summer. Directed by John Chu, In the Heights. This is a movie that I know we both have been hotly anticipating. If you don't know a lot about In the Heights, so this was the musical that Lin-Manuel Miranda did before Hamilton. It's about a neighborhood in Manhattan, Washington Heights. And it's a story of family and friendship and being a dreamer and what it means to feel a sense of community, but also wanting to kind of pursue those dreams that may take you outside of your community. It is such a beautiful story. The first time I ever experienced it, there's a high school local to here where we live, Deer Riff High School. I actually used to teach there, and they had a phenomenal production of this. It was beautiful, and the whole of this experience of this show is very vibrant, and it's very enlivening. It has hard moments. It has really deeply emotional points that will resonate with audiences, but it is truly something that feels like a big celebration. It essentially feels like you have been welcomed into a community, invited to their kind of block party, their celebration of their culture and their togetherness, and it's just such a beautiful film. John Chu's directing of this, I cannot say enough about it. When we saw the first trailer for it, and I know how excited you were to see this.
Very much so.
as you had listened to the music from it.
Yeah, I had the soundtrack, but I had never seen any productions of it at that point.
And I was excited to see because, like, certainly the soundtrack, I think, tells the story, but there's definitely some stuff missing, when you're just listening to, the music for the first time. And I remember seeing the trailer and being like, this is the movie. And sometimes when that happens, like, when you say that with a trailer, it's really hard for it to live up. This exceeds all expectations. It is so beautifully directed, so incredibly acted. Anthony Ramos is just outstanding.
I know he's been around a bit for a bunch of different things, but welcome to Hollywood. He is a star.
It feels like, no, and I completely agree with you, because he's been in other things. It's not like this is a name that we don't know, but this feels like this is your debut. This is the thing that's going to get you the next 5 projects. Like, he's so incredible.
He's no longer Philip, and he's no longer, Lady Gaga's friend from...
oh my gosh, that's right. He is in Star is Born. Yeah. He is the friend.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. He's fantastic in this.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. There's not one scene in this, and it's this. John Chu made this really incredible decision to be like, that right amount of referential to kind of the traditional of, like, old Hollywood musicals. There's definitely a scene that, like, screams Busby Berkeley films. It's a scene in a pool. But it feels fresh and modern. And I think the thing, and which is going to be apropos to our discussions
Very
today.
Very much so. I'm glad you actually picked this.
Hollywood musicals, the tradition of a Hollywood musical, I mean, really honestly, many of your major studios were built on the musical in film, were built on, obviously, certainly there's the history of silent film, but really were made the powerhouses that they were by those films. Things like Singin' in the Rain and American in Paris, like, those films really were the bread and butter of the Hollywood studio system for years. And then that tradition really started to die. And I think for a lot of reasons and things I'm sure we'll get into in our conversation today as we discuss the film that we're going to for my birthday. But In the Heights, to me, is the case in point of this feels like a Hollywood musical, and I know this is easy for me to say because I love musicals. I feel like I could recommend this even to a person who doesn't like musicals. I feel like I could recommend this to a young person who's not into musicals, and they will feel the things that you were supposed to feel seeing this.
Agreed. And I was trying. I had some friends ask me about this film after we had seen it because they hadn't watched it. We went to the theater to see it. They were going to watch it on HBO Max, and they had asked me my feelings on it. And one of the individuals actually said they're not big into musicals, and I used the description. Yeah, I used the comparison that you are of the film we're going to talk about today. I was like, well, if that's kind of the type of musical it is. It's a musical that's still telling the story that I think, the music just adds in dialogue as opposed to these, get out of your seat musical numbers. It does that, but it just adds to the story. And I think what I'm trying to say is just essentially agree with you that I think it's a good bridge musical for people that necessarily aren't into them, but also aren't, stage production type musical people.
Yeah. And I'll say this now, because the production design on it is insane. That way it's shot is insane. It's gorgeous. It feels realistic and dreamlike at the same time. And again, all conversations that are really going to be in play today. And I will say this. If this doesn't bring home some serious gold come next March, I'm going to be, and I know the thing working against it is it's a summer release.
There's 2, and
I'm going to be so disappointed.
Timeline on it is going to definitely, although I think it needed to come out when it did.
It's a summer film.
And we won't get into a huge portion of this today, but there is some controversy around it that Lin-Manuel Miranda himself has acknowledged at this point that they recognize now.
Yeah.
It's some, representation issues that, they said we need to be better next time.
And if you don't know a lot about this, look at Lin-Manuel Miranda's comments to it. Really, honestly, very, very humble and very, very understanding. Yeah. And the way I think more of those conversations should be handled.
It shows that even in making major strides, there's always more strides to be made, right? Yeah. And I think that's the thing. So,
I think it's important for Hollywood not to pat itself on the back and say, look what we made. No, keep making. you know.
But I don't, what the issue, that issue at hand, I do not think, though, takes away from what the film itself is, what the film itself is saying, and I think it is still just a completely beautiful film that, you know, I think deserves the recognition that it's getting.
So it's going to get lots of Oscar nominations? That's what you're telling me?
I hope so. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, we obviously we got a long way to go.
I will burn this house to the ground.
Not again. Weirdly, Anthony Hopkins beats out.
Somehow he beats out In the Heights for best film.
But yeah, I'm with you. Great movie. Watch it. My feet were moving the entire time. I'm not a dancer, and I was all in.
You can dance. I will say this, one last note to this. So that we saw this, we actually watched this in the theater. We have HBO Max, but we went when we saw this in the theater. Truly beautiful experience watching it with an eye. People were laughing. You could hear people crying because there's definitely some emotional beats in the movie. And people applauded at the end of the movie.
Yes.
It was a really,
cool.
It was a cool experience.
Very cool.
But the film we're going to be talking about today, although I did look to you at the end of this film, and I went, can this be my birthday movie? But today we are going to be talking about, so my pick for my birthday movie is La La Land.
Woo! La La Land, great pick. And we are going to do our best today to make sure that we get all character names right and not say them incorrect the entire episode.
You did verify as we were watching the film.
Many times.
What's her name? Mia.
All right, people, I am terrible with names.
As long as you don't call him Sebastian-y.
Yeah.
So I
just want to again apologize for all the Godfather fans for calling Tom Hagen Tommy the entire time. I just felt such a close connection with that character.
You felt like, I understand this character so deeply. I admire him so much. I'm going to give him my own personal nickname.
Do you know the irony in all that?
What?
I make a comment during that Godfather episode about two other characters that I thought I mixed up their names and never did.
Oh, really?
But Tom Hagen, I called Tommy the entire time. But anyway.
Again, we apologize here at the How Could You podcast.
More importantly,
Francis
this is your
Coppola.
birthday episode. And Lauren, it deserves the question. All right, all the films in the world. We were doing this one-off episode here in July for you to kind of, celebrate your love of film as well as a bridge for the summer for our fans. The question is, Lauren Tocci, you had all of the choices in the world. How could you pick La La Land as your birthday episode?
All right, so honestly, I'm getting the sweats just answering this. So here's the thing. So you did your birthday episode, and for you it was very easy. You're like, I'm gonna do 7,
yep.
And you came to me and you're like,
I might do it again next year.
I don't doubt that you would. But you wanted to do that for your birthday. It's your all-time favorite movie. If someone says to you, Ryan Tocci, what is your all-time favorite
7.
movie? We know. But when people ask me that question, I panic.
You really do.
It's an uncomfortable. I start fidgeting. I play with my hair. I'm like, and then the person who asked me a very innocent and what they thought would be a very short answer question then gets a 30-minute diatribe where I quote, Ever After, and I say, I could no sooner pick a favorite star in the heavens than I could pick a favorite movie. Because I have such a hard time with it. I remember one time one of our nieces asked us, and I off the cuff said Psycho, which you don't say to a 7-year-old when they ask you what your favorite movie is. You say, I don't know,
She was
Moana.
over 5 years old. All game.
And
you know the rule in this house.
Fair. And
horror is allowed in after
you're 5 years old. And in some ways, if you really honestly, if brass tacks, if you made me write it down, in a lot of ways I probably would pick Psycho. It's a movie that I can watch over and over again. I always find new things. But even when I say Psycho, I'm like, okay, but is that yes, it's my favorite Hitchcock film, no doubt. Well, I mean, all right, that's kind of tough though to say your favorite Hitchcock film.
Rope.
Yeah, Rope's actually my favorite Hitchcock film. But Psycho's probably one of my favorite films. And if you ask me my favorite horror film,
you're kind of giving my Carpenter argument that I always talk about when you talk about Hitchcock, because the Halloween, the Thing debate that I have going on. Yeah.
But even more, that's even more complicated, because if we're talking Hitchcock, I'd probably like, well, his best film's probably Rear Window. Like, it's really challenging for me to pick a favorite film. And I also feel like there are films that have like traveled with me throughout my life that I can kind of point to and go, well, that film was really significant to me at this point in my life. Like, if you're talking favorite films, like, how do you not cite The Wizard of Oz? Like, that changed filmmaking in so many ways. And then, like, you get into kind of those, like, modern classics, and it's like you think about, like, these benchmark films in your life that, like, change something about how you looked at cinema. Like, the first, and you'll appreciate this, the first time I saw Donnie Darko, I wouldn't say Donnie Darko is one of my favorite films, but, like, I can't deny how important it was for me to see that movie at that point in my life and what that did to how it expanded how I watched film.
Richard Kelly just smiled somewhere in the universe.
Yeah, I was hoping to make you smile because you gave me that movie to watch.
You always make me smile. Nailed it.
So it's really hard for me. Like, even as I said that, I'm sweating because I'm like, oh wait, did I just like cite Donnie Darko?
That might be the 4th of July meets.
That's fair. But like, this is where I really struggle. Like if you're talking classic cinema, like Casablanca, A Letter to Three Wives, Roman Holiday, like, you're talking like modern age stuff that's really impacted me. The movie Us, which, trust me, there's an episode coming about that film. Blair Witch Project. Like, it's really anxiety.
So what you would say is, my favorite movie is all of the movies.
All the movies are my favorite.
All my movies are my favorite movie.
And like, you can't deny.
Except for Green Book.
Except for Green Book. The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
We recently got to rewatch The Shape of Water in a theater, and listen, I know I'm an emotional person. I wept at the end, not because it's sad, because it's beautiful. Yeah. It's so beautiful. I know I talked about that a little bit on our Oscars episode. So it's really challenging for me. Like, you had rented out a theater for me, and you're like, you can watch any movie you want to watch, and I'm like, huh? Like, don't make me pick. Like, it's really, I find it incredibly challenging. So, because I feel like every year, even...
And we landed on Mulan. Just point that out.
Yeah, we really did.
Well, at that point, it had been a long time since we saw a new movie.
A new movie, and that was the intention.
Yeah.
And listen, that movie it took all of the fun of the animated classic out of it, but it's really beautifully filmed. It's
beautifully done.
Yeah.
It's just
the landscapes are gorgeous.
Not a very good movie structurally.
I don't think it's bad. All right, that's a conversation for another time. But like, so this has always been my struggle, is I really have a hard time hammering in a movie that I'm like, okay, this is my favorite movie. And then this is going to be a very weird thing. So La La Land is one of those movies that, and I know you'll remember this well, the first time I saw it, I didn't know how I felt about it by the end. I walked out of the theater and I had really, really loved it. But I was miffed by the ending. I was like, I didn't know if I liked what happened with these characters by the end of the film. I didn't know how I felt. And it was like this really weird thing, because I knew I loved it, and then we saw it a second time, and I was like, then even more blown away by it. And then like on subsequent rewatchings, it's a movie that I'm just like more in love, and I would now defend the ending to the hills of why that ending is so important. But
which they had to.
Yes.
Defend and protect that ending.
Because they wanted it changed, correct?
Well, I think the fear was always that it would be asked to be changed.
And it didn't do well in test screenings. La La Land did not do well in test screenings. But at the Venice Film Festival, it got a standing ovation. So here's the thing with La La Land. Because if we had been recording this podcast back in 2017, or during the 2016 Oscar season... Mm-hmm. And I will say this, and this is the weird relationship I have to La La Land. I really think Moonlight should have won Best Picture, but this is the weird relationship I have. But if I'm walking away going, yeah, but La La Land I think is one of my all-time favorite movies. And I can say, when we were rewatching it in anticipation of this episode, I was like, this is one of my favorite movies. Because I am entranced the entire time. There are times when I'm watching and enjoying it because of the spectacle. There are times I'm watching and enjoying because of the music, because of the acting, because of realizing the technical prowess of a second-time director and what he was able to do and innovate to make that those sequences have...
Damien Chazelle.
Dude.
I mean, he's
incredible.
Incredible.
So for all of those reasons, when I really think about it, I'm like, I've never had there are like 3 movies that can kind of circle in my mind that I can point to and go, if someone really asked me to like pin down, and I think it's The Shape of Water and Psycho and this. Because there's something about La La Land that just keeps drawing back. Now, if you know anything about my love for Los Angeles, like it honestly makes me want to go to LA every time I watch it, because much like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, another movie that I didn't love on first watch and now adore, it's a love letter to LA, and like and I'm sure, as we'll get into today, it's just, yeah, that's why I picked it. Also, it's a really great summer flick. It's a really great summer film.
You know, I know there's no way you talk about this film without the moonlight aspect of it, and we could get to that later, but you made a comment about it, and I just want to bring it up because I think it's important. So obviously everybody knows the most famous Oscar moment, you know, at least in recent history and maybe of all time, is the mess up of La La Land gets announced as Best Picture, but actually it was Moonlight, It was very apropos, right? Like, it felt like what should have happened that night, as both films should have been recognized. I think this it's going to be kind of a shot at the Oscars. This is the difficulty of, you know, the Oscars or any type of, you know, award ceremony, was Moonlight and La La Land were such different films, and so well done that it was so incredibly hard to pick. Because both had such an effect, both were done in such a way that it was impossible to go, this one deserves it over this one, because they were both incredible, but nowhere near on the same, you know, spectrum of what they were doing or telling.
No, and that's what makes it really hard. And oh gosh, this is like the one time I'm going to be really negative about the Oscars, so just like buckle in, everybody. This is the hardship to me of the subjectivity of, like, you know, essentially handing out awards for something that's so incredibly, like, subjective. Yeah. Like, you're asking me to say, is Moonlight or La La Land a better film? And I know people have strong opinions on La La Land, as they often do about movie musicals. Don't make me make that choice, because the significance historically, culturally, cinematically of a film like Moonlight, how it was shot, how that story was told in 3 segments, it's a masterpiece. Right. It is a masterpiece. It's a challenging movie in that it makes you have to look at these vignettes in this person's life to understand, like, where they end up by the end. It's such a beautifully distilled love story. It is such a commentary on addiction. It is such a sharp and biting and appropriate criticism of how the public school system oftentimes disproportionately affects, like, juveniles with, like, for small offenses, and oftentimes does not have the supports in place because of lack of funding, which is a soapbox I can get on another time. And then you have this movie like La La Land, which is light and airy, but so intensely and beautifully and meticulously shot. How do you make these films have to stand against each other? Right. It's honestly, it's unfair. It's unfair. And Moonlight should have won. And I will say that, even though I will say, I love La La Land in this deep way.
I'm not sure I 100% agree with you, but I also can't disagree with you. It's that weird.
That's what made it such a weird year, because it's like, I don't know, both. And I don't know if some of that is, like, does Damien Chazelle winning for Best Director and Moonlight winning for Best Picture balance the scales? I don't know. I don't know if that split makes anyone really feel like that both were, you know, recognized equally. I don't think a tie for Best Picture is in anyone's favor. It's the hardship of, what do you do when there are 2 films that are equally deserving? Because I would say a lot of years, it's like one film that everyone's like, okay, well, that's like a Best Picture film.
Right.
But, like, this was a year where it was like, but both of those are. Both of those films are. It makes it really challenging. So anyways, let's get into this film now. I'm just pumped. I figured out a way, after 2.5 episodes already this year about the Oscars, to wedge in another Oscar segment.
Understandable.
So let's talk about this film. So it opens in one of probably the most resplendent opening sequences to a film, Another Day of Sun, which the whole way in which this is filmed is incredible. Like, truly.
Agreed.
What was
one of the best opening sequences of all time.
I'll ask you, like, what was your feelings about La La Land the first time you saw it, or the first time seeing that opening sequence even?
You know, I'm a little bit, I probably may have had a different answer for you had you asked me this question yesterday morning, but we happened to watch some of the extras on the Blu-ray of this after, and Damien Chazelle talks about something, and it's like, yeah, that really was it, which was, this is the movie you're in. This is a musical. And we're going to talk a lot about how it doesn't play like but he wanted you to know you were in a musical right off the bat. And that's what it did. It threw me off. I don't know why. I knew what I was getting into, but it was like, wow, this song is great. It's catchy. You're into it. You're getting all different types of music and personalities, and it's colorful and it's bright, and it's just like, I am here. I am in it. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. But there's this really incredible, like, energy that starts with this, because, like, I mean, you're on, so if I would highly recommend, if you own the Blu-ray of this, if you're still someone who buys Blu-rays, like, checking out the special features of this, because even in description of it, I don't think it's going to do it justice. But, like, so essentially what they had to do is they would have the actors in that sequence, they would drive onto the back lot of a studio. They would park their cars behind each other, and they would practice the dance sequence. And then Damien Chazelle would take his iPhone and film the pattern of where the camera needed to go to capture. Because if you notice this, so it's a sequence that does look like it is a one-shot sequence. It's actually technically 3 panning shots that make up that opening dance sequence. Although Damien Chazelle is known for his long takes, and there's a really brilliant long take later in the film. Actually, there's several. But so that's how they would practice, and they had to reinforce the hoods of a lot of those cars so that the dancers could stand on them safely. So that's how they practiced and rehearsed it, and they had to. When they got to the freeway, so they had to close down the freeway for 3 days. I thought that was really interesting. So the producer of the film, Mark Platt, go ahead.
Oh, father of Ben Platt. Dear Evan Hansen coming out this fall.
Yes. So Mark Platt, also I never realized how much they look alike until he was doing the interview. Yeah. And it was actually it was interesting. I was like, oh, they have a lot of similar mannerisms too. So Mark Platt talked about this. So they had to get the city of LA to let them close down a section of freeway for 3 days. They only had 3 days to shoot it. It had to be done in bright sunlight because the sun.
I was actually shocked they got 3 days. Like when I heard that, because I think I said to you, I'm like, they have to do this in 1 day, and you were saying no.
3 days. They had to do it on a day, which is not hard in LA to get a bright, beautiful, sunny day, but they had a heat advisory the days they were filming it. So by record, the day they filmed the sequence, or the shot that's used in the film, it was 106 degrees. It was the hottest day that year in LA. And it was essentially...
Please silence all cell phones.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Also, your weekly screen report popped up on our Mac. We're going to discuss how long you're on your phone. Also, that weekly screen report feels like the most judgy thing that comes to my phone.
Squirrel! we get distracted easily.
Sorry, yeah. You were up 25%. I was researching for the podcast. Anyways, so when they filmed that sequence, they had to change a lot of the choreography. So they didn't realize that the ramp would be on a slant. So they had to change some of the dancers out because of height.
Oh, wow.
And when they were filming it, they said people were sweating so profusely, they had to bring extra changes of clothes just to keep people cool. Now, I will say this. At some point, I need Damien Chazelle to do me a big, big favor. I want a film just about the lead dancer that starts this off.
The Juliana Hough looking lady?
No, that's not the lead dancer.
Isn't it?
No, so it's Resamar Gafjar. She's the first girl who sings.
Oh,
and she leads it off. She's the first, so she's the, and this is a brilliant case and something that I think is a mark of genius in this film. There's such a beautiful use of diegetic and non-diegetic sound and then transdiegetic sound. Talking about the music that is naturally occurring, the music that's occurring within the headspace of the characters, and then sometimes when that changes between the two. Because that's not really interesting about musicals. If you're not a fan of musicals, like when a musical number happens, it's supposed to be like the outward expression of the inner thoughts of the person who starts off. So we're to think we're in her headspace, that she has imagined this sequence occurring as she's sitting in traffic. And she is so immediately electric. And don't get me wrong, the whole sequence is incredible, but you need that person who, like, really starts things off. She's been a lead dancer in quite a few things, but I'm like, I kind of just want, like, I want to know, like, her La La Land story. Like, what's her deal? Because she's just so immediately, like, magnetic. You're like, I want to know everything about her. So, Damien Chazelle, if you could make me another La La Land film, but just focus, like, start at that Another Day of Sun, like, sequence, but then just follow her story.
It's a cool scene because I think it's really what this film is trying to be throughout, which is this weird dynamic that LA is, right? Of hopeful people trying to make it, and then kind of the cross between, Another Day of Sun, of what most people outside of LA and the Hollywood machine and that era kind of feel like living there is. Of this vibrant, eclectic group, where it's just sunny all the time and happy and dancing and dreams are going to be made, but it's really all these people that are stuck in this traffic, trying to just do a daily grind every day. It's just an interesting, when you start to dig deeper on what's going on in that scene. But it does. It brings you into the film immediately of this. It is a love letter to Hollywood.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said, because, like, it's the fact that, like, every car is playing different music. There seems to be these, like, tiny little, like, tableaus in every single vehicle of, like, these different stories developing. And the fact that you have Mia is practicing her monologue, and, like, Sebastian is, like, going back and forth, like, he wants to hear that opening of that piano sequence so he can practice it later on. Like, it's, like, such a celebration. And then, like, if you watch the behind the scenes of this, like, how it was filmed, how the camera moved, like, they wanted it to feel as fluid as possible, but essentially, like, they got there and realized, like, the camera can't do what we need it to do, so they had to, like, really, like, reinvent, like, how this sequence is going to be shot to make it look like, it's such, like, a beautiful way to start a film. It's also, do you know what other filming location that is?
Die Hard 4? No, I don't.
It's the ramp and Speed.
Oh, nice. All right, cool.
Yeah.
I really did think it was going to be an action movie for some reason. So
it was actually that section.
Wait, is that the one they jump?
Yep.
Quote.
So that section was not open yet when Speed was filming.
Well, yeah, there was a big gap. They had to jump. I mean, we all know it wasn't open. What are you talking about?
Continuing on.
Sandra Bullock got it up to enough speed.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of diversions during this La La Land discussion.
We've been off for a month. We got a lot.
We're just excited to talk.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into the main characters.
Oh, yeah, the main characters. So there's these two people in the movie. Mia and Sebastian.
Listen, we're doing one-off episode. We're doing 3 months worth of episodes in one. So buckle in for a 5-hour episode, people.
So, and I love that this, so this sequence ends and then we get kind of into Mia's world.
Color palette. Can we just talk about the color palette?
Gorgeous.
And Mia's starting scene.
Just so intensely.
I jumped the gun here. You're right. I'm sorry.
No, I want to talk about the color palette.
We didn't talk about the coffee house.
Oh.
We'll bookend.
I want that job. I want that job. I want to work in that coffee house.
I believe you were a barista for a day.
Dude. Oh, yeah, I was a
How'd that go?
Oh, yeah, I quit. Because, all right, so I worked at...
because no Hollywood stars came in, you were like, I'm done.
So I worked at a Starbucks for literally like a day, and they made us do tasting notes at the beginning of my shift, and I accidentally said this, so they poured a coffee and they're like, tell us what tasting notes you know. So I was like, this one tastes like a cigarette is inside of it.
I've never heard that before.
And they looked so disappointed in me.
Wonder why.
And then I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm made out for this.
Wait, did you quit or get fired? Hold on, we've never talked about this fully.
No, I quit, I promise.
All right, so, okay. Okay, so Starbucks wasn't for you, but a Hollywood, movie set would be your coffee house of choice.
Yeah, given that it's like Luke's Diner from Gilmore Girls.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we've actually...
Wait, so that's shot in Anytown, USA?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Wait, you didn't?
I did not recognize that. I usually recognize it. I did not recognize it there.
Do you want me to blow your mind a little further?
Please do.
Okay, you know when Mia and Sebastian are walking, and Mia turns to Sebastian, she goes, "Oh, I hate jazz." Do you know why that's shot there? Because that's the album cover for Wish You Were Here.
Oh my gosh. I can see it. I totally can see it.
Yep.
The handshake.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Never mind, this movie is the greatest movie of all time.
Favorite movie ever. So the reason I love the Warner Brothers sequence is because, like, I think, you pointed out, like, this is a little bit of an So the really cool thing I think this film does is it bucks up dreams and reality so closely together. It intertwines them. It separates them. It really, I think, is the best portrayal of the dynamic tension of, like, kind of the life we want to live and the one we're currently in, and what we imagine things to be, and then kind of the reality of that. And I think this is a film that really, the flow of that tension is so beautifully distilled that it never feels pressured, but it feels like that feeling we all have of being in that liminal space between our dreams and our reality. And I think that's something that this film does really well. And I think the coffee sequence, or the coffee shop sequence, because we have this actress come in, she's shot from behind. We don't know who she is. We understand her to be phenomenally famous because of how she comes into the coffee shop. And we get to see kind of what Mia's grind is on a, no pun intended with her working in a coffee shop, but what her grind is on a daily basis. And one of the things I love that they do with the Mia character is, yes, she is someone beleaguered by the audition process, and we get to see how the harshness of that audition process. But she's someone who's so desperately in love with the world that she gets to occupy. Because we get to hear that later when Sebastian comes to visit her at the coffee house and they're just walking around the lot, which I'm sure we'll talk about that sequence a little bit at least. And just her pointing out and just being so excited by the things that she gets to be around all the time. Like, she's in love with movies. The same way Sebastian's in love with jazz, she's in love with film. And I think that's like a really cool thing to get to see, because it's a film that is, you opened up with a quote that comes later in the film that, how are you going to be a revolutionary when you're such a traditionalist? And I think this is a film that's another tension that's like core to this film. It's the tradition of Hollywood cinema and all of the beauty of that scope, but then also the reality of, like, how do you keep that thing alive? And that thing being the movie musical. How do you keep that alive for a modern audience who may not understand the references being made, and also maybe don't really care about the tradition of the Hollywood musical, but making them care about it in a modern age? Like, it's a really interesting, there's so many really interesting tension points within this film without feeling tense at all.
Right.
But really, like, interesting, like, transitory phases that this film kind of, like, operates. And it's really cool. And then we get that awesome someone in the crowd sequence, which is not how anyone looks when they're getting ready. I just want to point that out. You, like, never bring a hairdryer over to me and, like, burst glitter into my face when I'm getting ready. Why is that?
That's an important question, and maybe a very important moment in our marriage of why I've not done that. So we'll discuss that later. But maybe for your birthday dinner, we'll make sure before you go out that this is what. Okay. We can say this about so many scenes, right? I love this scene because what Chazelle is doing here is interesting because it's such a catchy song.
Yes.
But again, I think it's literally what it's talking to you about is the anxiety for these people in Hollywood and these any artist really, right? Like, but especially in this Hollywood machine of, like, every outing, every party is this hope for discovery. Like, and you're doing it in this just, the song is so catchy, it's you're into it, but you're seeing through Mia's eyes just the anxiety and the stress of every interaction is a hope that your career is going to be advanced, and when that's not happening, just how depressing and hard that is. And I couldn't imagine that just every social interaction you have to be on and you have to be hopeful. It's a very interesting song, which there's so much more going on there in just this 2 minutes that I think, again, is really introducing you, because it's so early in the film, introducing you to what you're being told and what's being explained to you.
No, and it's an incredible point to make here, because I think even, too, it's also, like, the guarded nature, because she has that kind of, like, sleazy, like, screenwriter who, like, sidles up to her at the party and, like... Yeah, I completely agree. Like, it does, because it's something that's so, like, catchy. And it has, again, there's these great, like, so the transition is very referential to, like, classic Hollywood musicals or even classic Hollywood cinema, like, where the transitions show, like, the bright neons of, like, the places that they're going by. And then you kind of have that, like, Gaussian blur of, like, you know, the champagne, and it's, like, fade, you know, it's kind of, like, blurred in at the edges. And then you have this, like, mid-century modern, like, madcap kind of, like, party sequence happening. It feels very, like, early 60s. But again, all of these very real of, like, no, but this is the grind of being in Hollywood. Like, they're not just going to a party.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm not saying that people, like, everything is so, every moment that they have is stressful, but I couldn't imagine, I mean, especially as somebody with social anxiety on its own, just going to any party to me is but let alone, like, you feel like you're almost on an audition every time. Like, every person you meet, you know, for whatever reason, you know, let alone, you know, a lot of these people are supposed to be single too, and I think that's, you know, playing a layer into this as well. Just a really... You know,
there's that line in the song, a chance encounter could be the one that you're waiting for.
Right.
Like, it's because, like, I think that's, you know, right, so if you think back to, like, old Hollywood, like, the being discovered at, like, the malt shop, like, you know, and but you realize, like, so much of this thing that we see is not understanding, like, not only the raw talent, but also the immense amount of, like, luck that comes into, or the immense amount of, like, someone deciding that you're worth being invested in, because, like, you get the feeling, like, that Mia, because obviously by the end of this, like, we know that Mia's journey is she becomes phenomenally famous and well respected.
Spoilers!
Oh, sorry. We're getting there. But the notion that it's like, but we're watching Mia go on audition after audition where, they're not recognizing that she's special. She is literally just someone in the crowd.
Yes. And that's a good pairing with the scene that occurs before this, which is the audition scene. You know, and there's a couple of things there, which is, again, the color palette, which I know we're going to talk more deeply about here in a moment, but the blue in that scene. Yeah. And it's obviously, I mean, there's no question what that's signifying in that moment. And I think it's so... You're literally Emma Stone, and I'm talking about Emma Stone, not Mia here. Emma Stone's giving one of her, like, best scenes. Like, you know, she's just nailing the scene, and you as an audience are like, oh my God. Like, you are Emma in Stone. It. That is Emma Stone acting. Like, that is how you get a part. And then just the callousness of the, you know, the casting director and how they're more worried about what's going on through that window. And as soon as that person's there, and you're heartbreaking because you know it before she does, that this audition's not going anywhere. And we're pretty sure it's not going to because it's so early in the film anyway. But, you know, when she's giving this heartbreaking scene that she's just giving her whole heart into, and it just shows, like, and then that moment she walks out and it's just, you see 10 Emma Stones, you know, sitting there.
It's almost dystopian.
Let me rephrase that. 10 Mias.
10 Mias, yeah. It's like this dystopian moment of, like, oh my gosh, that is, like, how disposable, like, these immense talents, but how disposable they are to people who are sitting behind that table.
Right, it's so much talent is in the world, and it's just sometimes luck and moment. It's just
right opportunity, right door opened, and, like, and, you know, going back to, so, because then you go into this world where you realize, like, so she's, like, in essentially this, like, you know, this, like, conclave of, like, artists and writers and people who are also within, like, this kind of struggle of, like, trying to make it in Hollywood, like, in her part one. Her mural of Ingmar Bergman in her bedroom is my absolute goal. I looked at our dining room and I'm like, could we get that up there if we really... but it's this
Yeah, remember that for holiday purposes.
But like you have this like kind of we get this like beautiful sequence. It feels like very vibrant and alive, like much of the film. And I think a lot of that is credit to this, kind of talking about this color palette. Is one of the things I really appreciate too. Another tension that's within this is like the Sebastian character. His tones are very much that muted late 40s, early 50s kind of Rat Pack, old Hollywood way of dressing, but his whole entire color palette, that it's muted tones, like the things that are like kind of like classic quote unquote like man's dress, like during that time. And then everything with Mia feels like to me very mid 50s to early 60s, like vibrant pops of color. It's blues, it's yellows, it's reds, it's greens, like it's very, very bright and vibrant. And I think what's cool about that and these decisions made by the costume designer is to make, because these are outfits that feel very much like grounded in reality. It's not like they look like so absurdist that you feel like they're costumes. Those look like cocktail dresses you would wear to a party, but at the same time, it's like they're so perfectly chosen to make sure that like against this very vibrant world that she lives in, that she pops just a little bit more because of those choices that are making. Even their apartment, like you see, it's color blocked off. Like it's not, I mean, it's the most ideal part. I don't know any struggling artist that lives in an apartment that looks like that, but like,
well, but they are supposed to be, 5 of them living?
It's supposed to be 5, and I think you're supposed to understand that the one friend is a little bit more successful because she's like, I can, I'm essentially going to audition you for everything that I can.
And I mean, you see that with Sebastian. Sebastian's place is not.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it looks like a 1-bedroom, not much on the walls.
It essentially looks like a 1-room apartment, and then like a kitchen, and then you go to the someone in the crowd sequence, which is beautiful. Again, I would highly recommend watching like any special features you can on how that scene was achieved, because that is somebody's house. That guy was backflipping off of a roof. He did it 15 times to get the take, and they're really dancing right on the edge of the pool. Like all of that is genuine. They had to get a special camera, like on a hydraulic, to be able to like dip into the water and dip back out. And it's supposed to feel like everything what it is, which is like this incredibly vibrant moment. And then, but we just get to see Mia like so downtrodden, so like beaten up by her day. Like she's done this grind at this like coffee shop. She then goes on these auditions and things aren't working out. Her friends take her out, but the party isn't what she wants. Like she's someone who's really existing in the Hollywood space, but not thriving. Like going to these, like as you pointed out so perfectly, these parties aren't fun. And then what I love that this film does is it takes you right up to the moment when they're about to meet and then goes, not yet. You gotta know Sebastian's story and everything that leads him here. I think that's such a cool choice. It's such a bold choice to make, to let us, to kind of like situate them as though their stories are dealt with equity. Like it's not, this is truly Mia and Sebastian's story of how they essentially come to the fruition of their dreams.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously this, in the end, this is a very interesting finale when we get there to the movie of, is this movie a happy ending or a sad ending or a mixture?
I have thoughts.
And just talking about kind of Mia's journey on the front end of it, and also talking, I want to give a little more talking. Damien Chazelle, so the film he did before this is Whiplash, right? Mm-hmm. And which is just, you need to see it if you haven't.
It's incredible.
It is just an incredible hard watch, but not in like a doleful way. I mean, it is, it's good. You were talking about like the outward stress of that, like where the tension is on full display. Where this, it's more underneath. That is on full display in that film. Yeah. But that's what Chazelle, with this movie and with Whiplash, I mean, he just shows this struggle and this stress and the carnage, and I think most of all, like kind of the sacrifice to chasing dreams in the arts. And I think that is something he has just found a niche with. Like, it obviously is this voice inside him that he is able to just cue into deeply and poignantly.
No, 100%. And like, if you think about this, so the script and the music, or the script and the lyrics or the ideas for the songs, he writes them when he's still at Harvard. So no slouch at that. He writes these while he's still at Harvard. He has to make Whiplash in order to make La La Land.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I would never have thought that.
And he knew, he was like, Whiplash has to go well because they won't make me make La La Land. And that had to do La La Land, you know, on a lesser budget because he knew that this was an incredible risk. And he was not willing to sacrifice vision. He was like, I'm not sacrificing that opening sequence. I'm not sacrificing the ending, which obviously we're going to talk about. You know, there's not one bit of it he wanted to sacrifice. And if you think about like how this comes together, because Whiplash is incredible, but I mean, he's a really new director. You know, he casts Emma Stone because of her work as Sally Bowles in Cabaret on Broadway. Nice. He went and saw the show and then was like, I want you to be in this film.
Okay, so we saw that show.
Yes.
However, we saw it with Michelle Williams.
Yes.
And we loved it.
It was incredible.
Do you ever regret that we went to see it with Michelle Williams over Emma Stone?
No, and here's why. So I think, and I say this as a credit to Emma Stone, this is not a negative to Emma Stone. I think Emma Stone probably plays Sally Bowles close to the Liza Minnelli.
Yeah, I got you.
Yes, there's a hint of darkness there, but it's like the energy, the kind of manic pixie dream girl, if you will, of what Sally Bowles is supposed to be. Yeah, Michelle Williams plays every bit of that darkness. And I love that we got to see that version.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, would have loved to see them both.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, listen, if you say to me, Time Machine, you can go back and watch Emma Stone. Of course. Also,
and Alan Cumming, I'll just watch on stage any day, any time. Like,
we saw him in a one-man show at Macbeth. It was genius.
Yes.
Genius.
But I agree with you. I was glad you kind of said Emma Stone. I want to say, because she's legitimately one of my all-time favorite actresses. And I'm really happy she ends up winning the Oscar for this movie.
Yes.
Because she deserves it.
Oh, 100%.
And what I mean by that is we talk a lot of times about the Lifetime Achievement Oscar, where sometimes the people aren't. She deserves it fully for this movie.
And we'll get to the scene that wins her that Oscar.
Agreed.
I'm sure we will. I'll try not to cry. But, you know, so we get to Sebastian's story. I love the sequence with his sister, Rosemary DeWitt. Like, it's a kind of a small performance but it's just so perfect because you completely understand their relationship immediately. Yeah. And you get really honestly a sense of like who he is, someone a little embittered. Like, and I like this, that me and Sebastian's story, like, for the beauty of Another Day of Sun and for the beauty of the place where they're at, because I mean, Los Angeles looks gorgeous in this film. You do get the sense like this town has beaten them both up, like, to a pulp. And we never know the whole story with how Sebastian like lost the money in this venture for the nightclub.
Shady man. That's all you need to know.
That's all you know. It's a shady person. You don't know who it is. You don't know. But I kind of like that about it. And I love that because the sequence then of when he goes into to play in the restaurant, I absolutely adore the interaction he has with J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons is genius in everything, and especially in Whiplash.
Yeah.
It's funny, Damien Chazelle offered him, said, you can either play Mia's dad or you can play the restaurant manager, whichever one you want. And he's like, well, Mia's dad doesn't end up having any lines. So, like,
were the lines cut then? I mean, yeah.
I have a feeling, yes. I have a feeling although because you kind of could see him as Mia's dad too. But J.K. Simmons, I love that whole interaction of, like, I thought in Hollywood it was a one for you, one for me kind of system. How about two for you, one for me? How about all for you, none for me? He's like, yep, that's right. Like, and I love that, like, he starts playing what's called Mia and Sebastian's theme. It's so entrancing, and, like, no one's paying attention to it except Mia. It almost makes you feel like Mia is the only one who can really hear it. And the fact that she goes into the club. Also, I'll say this. There is not a shot in this film that shouldn't be the poster for the film.
Right.
Because we have a really beautiful alternative poster that you bought for me for La La Land. But this is, like, every shot, like, even just, like, when she's standing in front of the club and there's the restaurant and there's the two red neon lights that she's framed in between and she pauses to hear it. And then she goes in. And then, like, you see her. She's so immediately entranced by him. And then he just pushes by her. And you're like, this movie is an upending of expectations in many ways. Like, 'cause it's like, oh, this isn't the meet cute. 'Cause, like, then you realize, like, well, I mean, like, she flipped him off in traffic. He dismisses her here. And then you get the really hilarious when they're at that party.
Oh, yeah.
And he's playing the friggin' guitar.
Yes. I just want to point out I had that guitar.
Shut up.
I'm not kidding you.
You had a guitar?
Not that I had a guitar. I had that guitar. I mean, not the specific one that he used, but the exact one that he used.
Did you play the guitar?
My sisters, when they listen to this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And if either of them have any pictures of me with it, please post them, because legit, I had that guitar.
Did you play the guitar?
I mean, it depends on what your definition of playing.
Did you play I Ran on the guitar?
Maybe I can find it. Maybe I still have it floating around here somewhere.
Tassie, first off, if it is, Halloween costume, settled upon. Second of all, like, did you think, like, was this like when you had the saxophone, like, you thought, like, I'm gonna have a career in guitar?
No, I think Santa brought me this guitar
nice,
in hopes that I would be both a guitarist and a keyboard player at the same time.
Those are bold aspirations, Santa.
Time will tell.
New hobbies.
There we go.
New hobbies.
Midlife crisis. Next project.
Hey, so
learn how to play the guitar.
So Ryan, what's going on? Well, I've been really working hard on my guitar.
Yeah. I hit notes, if that counts. I think there were times where you get that little, like, you know, like the Casio keyboards where you hit a thing where it plays some extra, you know.
I miss my Casio keyboard.
But did your Casio strap around you and you could play it while standing up?
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
I think that's why I didn't take up the keyboard.
Exactly.
If it had strapped to me, I'm playing the guitar all day long. Keyboard can't come with you as mobily.
That's true. So, yeah. So anyway, again, diverted there, sorry.
Cool. La La Land.
Just shows how much Ryan Gosling and I are alike.
Okay. All right. So anyway, so we get this, like, funny, I do love that sequencing of the party, because it's just, it has a really good sense of humor. I love the line of, like, when he says, I'll guess I'll see you in the movies. Like, you get that there's this tension of, like, and so actually this, to me, always plays off of really well. If you've ever seen Singin' in the Rain, there's this the great sequence when Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds meet each other in the film, and Debbie Reynolds acts like a lofty actress, and, like, you know, as though, like, Gene Kelly, like, what he does in movies is not, like, serious acting, and then she shows up later at a party, and is one of, like, the dancing girls at the party, and he's like, oh, who's such a serious actress, and there's this great thing, and I think you have that with Mia and Sebastian, this, like, serious actress, serious musician kind of, like, pitted against each other, and I love that, and I think this further affirms, like, kind of that parallel, because so Ryan Gosling would watch Singin' in the Rain every day of production to get himself in the right headspace, which,
yeah,
if you rewatch the film, you can see that inspiration, not only from a filmic standpoint, but I think definitively
it also shows the maddening part of Sebastian a little bit coming out.
Maddening or totally justifiable? We'll get there, because there's definitely a scene with that. But then you get, I mean, what...
This episode should be called, and we'll get to that.
I've said that a lot. Yes. I'm not going to remember any of those things. Hold on.
We've not used Tommy once, so we're good.
All names have been said correctly. I also love, too, because that sequence when he's playing on the guitar, not to linger too much in this space, because the next scene is so genius, but I love the fact that, like, I think Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling in some ways made kind of a legendary acting pairing, because I think they play so well off each other. Because, like, all right, and this is not, I'm certainly not trying to objectify either party here, but, like, Ryan Gosling is so dang immediately charming and effortless and stunningly handsome. You need something against that doesn't make that, like, solely the objectification of him, like, the central feature to that. Like, I think you need kind of that good comedic pairing. I always feel like they balance off of each other really well. Their energies seem to...
100%. I mean, chemistry.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can't... And if you see interviews with them, there's obviously a bond there that works. And not in, like, this, oh, are you shipping them type of way. No. Like, it's just a friendship bond that works on screen with, like, just just amazingness. Like,
because I think there's, like, a deep care and friendship there. Like, there has to be, because... Oh, and also, they're just, like, tour de force actors that 100% can just occupy those spaces. But I do think there's something about their on-screen chemistry that's just so perfect.
Well, and I agree with you. I think they're so alike, but it's like I think Ryan Gosling brings a more intensity to his acting than maybe Emma Stone does, but Emma Stone brings a more, like, likability, and not that obviously Ryan Gosling is immensely.
He has
likable.
like a quiet fire that you can tell is like burning deep, whereas I think hers it's much more present.
She is just. I mean, the thing is, when Emma Stone, like, I was thinking about this about playing villains, and it's kind of even what the quote unquote issue with Cruella is. Like, she's just such a likable actress,
yes,
that it's hard to, like, you're just engaged with her, like you rooting for her in everything that she's in, and that I think just pairs so well between the two of them. They both are comedic, both are dramatic, but they just pair nicely.
No, 100%, I agree with you. And then and I think that chemistry is probably best exemplified in that next scene, which is A Lovely Night, which takes place in the park below, just below Griffith Observatory. I can't even write about it. I can't even talk about it. It's so perfect. I just can't.
It's cinema gold and cinema history.
Yeah, it's truly so immediately iconic. And just, I mean, honestly, so this is the one shot or the one long take that's so impressive in this film. And there are a lot of long takes that are impressive in this film, but particularly this one because of the choreography. They filmed this, they had 5 takes over 2 days because there was only a 30-minute window each evening that the lighting would be the ideal conditions to film this.
This is shot on location.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It just blows my mind every time I see it.
So here's the thing. The location, because you and I have been near to that point, the location's going to look different because of the fact the bench and the street light were brought in. So it will look,
but I'm not even talking about. I'm just like how they get the lighting and the coloring of LA in the background is remarkable.
Yeah, it's from 7:20 to 7:50 each night. That was the 30-minute window, and they had to. So what they had to do is they would do the sequence, and then they would have to be patted down to get all of the sweat off of them because they filmed this in the summer in LA to get all of the sweat off of them, and then they would have to go and do it again. And
Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone do not sweat.
No. They glisten.
Yes.
It was the 4th, so they did 5 takes. It was the 4th take is the take that's used in the film.
They nail it. I think you were talking about how you know the whole choreography at this point, or a good portion of it, right?
Yeah, I do. Well, and I didn't realize how many times I've watched that sequence, because sometimes I just watch it, because I love it. I could feel my feet move, and I'm like, oh.
Should we not do Drink of the Movie this month and just do Dance of the Movie?
Choreography of the...
For this episode?
Would you learn the choreography? Come on.
What did I just walk myself into? Dance myself into, I should say.
So I really truly love this sequence. I can't say enough about it. And this is to me the immediate charm. To me it's so reminiscent. When you talk about those classic dancing pairs, and I know obviously that Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were, classically trained dancers, so it's hard to compare. I mean more the charm of it and the personality that's put into it. Because Ryan Gosling's just so effortlessly, and Emma Stone, they just feel so old Hollywood. They just feel like movie star. I don't know how to explain it and really put it eloquently into words, but there's just something about them. Every mannerism and movement and turn just feels so perfect, but not forced. This is just naturally how good they are at things. And Damien Chazelle talked about this. He didn't want classically trained dancers in the lead roles, and he said the reason for this is because they are supposed to be struggling. They haven't made it yet. So he said he wanted the expression of those dance sequences to feel a little raw.
Yeah.
Because of that.
It makes sense. And I think, and to their credit, and I know you're not saying this, I'm just kind of saying, that is a star, right? In anything, in athletics or in arts. That is where a star is born. Yeah. and made is the immense hard work that's behind the scenes you don't see to make things look effortless on screen.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you completely that they look effortless when they're doing this, smooth, and like, but you see the behind the scenes stuff, and you know how much is put into these roles. I mean, and knowing the little bit that I've seen about Ryan Gosling is that man seems like when he dives into a role, he is method. I mean, he's got a vision, and he is putting his whole heart into it to be prepared.
What he did for this film, like, so Ryan Gosling didn't know how to play the piano, but he didn't want a body double to have to be used. So he learned how to play every song. So he learned jazz piano for every single song so that it could be his hands playing it the entire film. They had a body double on set, like, so a guy who actually could play the piano on set for the first day, and then Ryan Gosling started playing, and they dismissed the guy after the first day because Ryan Gosling had learned how to do everything.
So what you're saying is Ryan Gosling put this poor guy out of a job? He
definitely did, but he learned everything. And John Legend's, like, so John Legend is in the film. We haven't gotten to his sequences yet, but like he said, he was so jealous of it and so impressed by it because he was like, he learned it so quickly. But they said, like, I mean, he would practice for, I forget what they said, it was like something crazy, like it was like 2 hours a day, 6 days a week that he would practice with the instructor that doesn't even, and then she would record herself playing it so he could practice more at home. So everything you're seeing is actually him playing the piano, which is kind of incredible because you're not talking about certainly simple, but it adds to the realism of it.
Absolutely.
And so after What a Waste of a Lovely, or sorry, it's called A Lovely Night, we get back to the WB lot, and we have some really cool things that are set up that don't come to fruition until later in the film. So you have these really cool, like, this really cool moment of Sebastian and Mia are walking around the WB lot. So you get to see a lot of filming locations. So that center area is called Anytown, USA. A lot of productions have happened there. A lot of things have been filmed there. Probably one of the coolest things, and they actually pointed out in the film, and you and I saw it when we were on the WB studio tour, is the window from Casablanca where Rick looks out the window. So that's on the WB. So part of Casablanca was filmed on the WB studio lot. And then, we talked about the Wish You Were Here, but there's a really cool thing because they're walking past a production. And I've seen La La Land many times, and I have never connected this. So there's this beautiful sequence that happens at the end of the film where we go through, like, the dreamlike version if Sebastian and Mia had actually ended up together. And they walk past a soundstage, and they look into the soundstage. It looks like very classic Hollywood setup. Almost looks kind of like Singing in the Rain ending sequence. And that set is what is used later in the dream sequence. And then the scene that they walk by where the woman's holding the balloons and the Arc de Triomphe is behind her, that is then used in the Mia and Sebastian scene where when Mia's filming the movie in Paris.
I gotcha.
She's holding that bouquet of balloons in front of that fake Arc de Triomphe. So, like, it's a cool mirroring that happens.
Yeah.
I've never noticed it before. I noticed it watching the film this time. I don't know why in particular, but one of the things I really love about, like, this kind of, like, moment in their relationship is you're getting to see the expression of their separate passions, of, like, her being so passionate about film and her being able to kind of call out, like, all of the movies that she loved. And then we get a great How Could You?
I wrote it too.
Did ya?
Yes, Mia has a How Could You moment.
Because she has not seen what film?
A Rebel Without a Cause.
Ryan Tocci.
Bullets. That's my awkwardness of going.
I've never seen it.
Me and I have not seen
Ryan
it.
Tocci, how could you not have seen Rebel Without a Cause?
Oh man, season 3 just got a new episode.
I believe it did because of this birthday episode.
I literally wrote down Mia has a How Could You moment.
Yeah, I literally have the same thing written in my notes. That's hilarious.
I also had written, what made me laugh was listening to Sebastian when they're in the sitting down for the jazz, and he starts this passionate speech about jazz. Just made me think of how you and I talk about cinema and the theater experience. You have it written down too.
I have the exact same thing.
Welcome to the How Cute You podcast, where we share one brain.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just like.
Well, that explains the Tommy Hagen thing. If we only share one.
Right. I'm just like, I'm listening to that, going, oh yeah, I'm totally with you, man. Just put, the theater in there, and I am 100% behind you.
I did 100, and I thought that because I wrote that down, and I was just like, this must be how Mia feels is how people feel whenever we talk about movies. Yeah. And I was just like, Oh my God. Like, because, his intensity in that moment, but it feels like, and that's in a credit to the performance, it feels like it's sprung from somewhere so genuine. And like, and I love when Mia says, like, what about like elevator jazz? And like, it's just what they put on in the background. And I'm like, oh my God, this would be like saying something like negative about film to us. It's such a great. And then we get the really from there, we get the really iconic City of Stars performance, which is so beautiful. And I have a very fun memory from the first time we watched the film and we saw that sequence. Do you?
I don't.
So we're watching, so you have this sequence in there, and then there's the kind of the setup that they're going to go see Rebel Without a Cause together at the Rialto, which they reopened for this film. And he goes to the pier, and he finds the hat, and he starts doing tricks at the hat. And you just, in the most hilarious, you went, okay, in the theater, just so like, Ryan Gosling can do anything. It was hilarious. Yes. I remember it so clearly.
I believe my feeling was Ryan Gosling ruins all men for women. Yes.
Yeah, it's such a great, and I love there's such like a really great, and this is where you get to kind of see like a lot of his charm come through, because you have just this like incredible, like it's just him walking on the pier, and then he kind of dances with the one woman, and like, and you know,
I don't like how the husband gets mad.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Would you not get mad if Ryan Gosling?
I just pointed out.
And it's just like, it's such like a great and charming moment. That's the song that won Best Song at the Academy Awards.
It was that. Why did I think it was? Okay.
No, because I think we both thought it was going to be Another Day of Sun, and then it was City of Stars.
I think I thought it was Audition, actually.
Oh, okay, all right. Audition, parentheses, here's to the Fool's Who Dream. So it's just, I love that moment, and then, like, you get, what's really great from this is then you kind of get into their love story, which is, I love where this is born from, that it's, like, born from, like, their theater experience, which is very cool.
I have to say, though, every time forget the Greg character exists in this movie.
Oh, that she has a boyfriend?
That she has a boyfriend.
Every time, same thing. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a boyfriend. Because can I tell you, I was thinking about their first kiss, and I was like, when does their first kiss happen? And then I realized I was remembering their first kiss from Crazy Stupid Love, and not from this. And I was like, and in my head, I'm like, oh no, there's a boyfriend in Crazy Stupid Love that she breaks up with, which is played by like Josh Groban. But in this, I was like, oh my gosh, she's got a boyfriend? Why do I not remember Greg? And I think it's because Greg is supposed to be so immensely forgettable.
Played by Finn Wittrock, I may have pronounced that wrong, who I always know him from The Big Short, which is also Ryan Gosling.
Yep. Yeah,
so I think he's a big American Horror Story guy, too. I think he's in a lot of those. But yeah, he just... Here's the thing. It's a forgettable character, obviously. Yes. It's kind of a forgettable moment. But what I do like about it, as when rewatching it, was you were talking about the expectations, right? They're giving you what is in most romantic films the finale, you know, midway in the movie when she leaves Greg, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
The moment she realizes, no, I'm with the wrong person. I need to be with Sebastian. And I like that. I really, because at that moment you're kind of like, oh, this is what happens after the credits go on most romantic films.
If you're looking for another film that distills that idea really well, watch the movie The Baxter.
I knew you were going to go to The Baxter.
Listen, Michelle Williams coming up again.
I was going to say Michelle Williams.
The Baxter is a movie that is about essentially, like, so if you think about like any romantic comedy that ends with a guy getting left at the altar, it's supposed to be a movie about the guy who gets left at the altar. It's actually really charming. And it's really funny, and it has for whatever reason, a sequence in that film that you and I quote all the time.
My gosh, yeah.
Like,
well, it's so good. Peter Dinklage is in it. He's excellent.
Oh, he's
Elizabeth Banks. It's written and directed and starring Michael Showalter, if anybody knows, from The State and Wet Hot American Summer. I mean, yeah.
It's one of my favorite romantic comedies.
It's great. It's a really good movie.
So back to La La Land. So then, we get this beautiful sequence where... they essentially go to the theater. They almost kiss. I love their reaction to the fact that they don't get to have, the fruition of that moment. I love the shot of her. I want someone to take I won't look like Emma Stone, but I want someone to take a picture of me standing in front of a film screen like that. It's so beautiful. It's so epic in its proportions. And then you get the great Griffith Observatory sequence, because Griffith Observatory features heavily in Rebel Without a Cause, so then they drive to there.
Beautiful, looks beautiful, greatly shot, but the biggest fallacy of the entire movie. Not the big dance sequences on the middle of a... You can't get to the Griffith Observatory with nobody up there.
That's actually a really good point. We tried.
That thing is chaos. So that was the one I went, nope.
I'm out of the movie. I don't believe this. Everything else makes sense to me. Them floating in the air in the stars, totally believe that happened. But no, that lack of the crowd at the Griffith Observatory.
But it does look great. It's great, and then you get that. Oh my god!
Oh, it's gorgeous.
The dance scene in the sky, in the stars.
It was actually supposed to be an underwater sequence.
Oh, interesting.
And then they changed it to, which obviously makes a lot more sense. This, so interestingly, this film, and then you get a lot of it in the next sequence. So there's over 70 locations for this film filmed in and around LA. Griffith Observatory, they weren't actually allowed to film inside of it. I believe they created a set to look like the Griffith Observatory. Because they couldn't film inside of it, but were able to film on the outside. So all of this is done on location, which really distinguishes it. And I think this comes into play because we get this incredible montage of kind of the beginning of their relationship and them kind of having fun and dancing around LA. And we get to see all of, the Angel's Flight, which is a famous LA landmark, another thing that was reopened because of this film. You get to see them at a food market. There are all these really cool sequences we get to have with them in and around LA, which is, incredible. And then we get into this, we have this fun lighthouse, the sequence of them at the lighthouse with the jazz going back and forth with them. And then you kind of get into what I think is a really cool component of this that distinguishes it from the traditional Hollywood musicals, is that there's this bumping up of dreams and reality, because it's not filmed on a soundstage until you get that ending sequence. It's filmed on real locations. And I think this is something that Damien Chazelle is doing because he wants those realities to exist kind of simultaneously. The idea of kind of the dream version of Hollywood, but showing it actually in the city, showing them existing in these spaces. They would be dancing and playing around not on sound stages, but around spots in LA. And it's a really cool thing because you get to have this dreamlike version and this musical version, but on actual location. I think it gives it a very different kind of energy than if this had been filmed all on sound stages, which the traditional Hollywood musicals were.
Well said.
Mainly because the cameras were so big and immovable that you couldn't do that. And then we get John Legend, which is always a delight whenever you have John Legend in something.
I have a quick question for you right before we get to that. The timeline on this film.
Yeah.
It's something that I've never quite known. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this with the last couple of films with timeline a lot. Is this movie supposed to take place within this 3-season period before we get to the 4th season, which obviously jumps ahead 5 years? Is their relationship supposed to only be over these few months, or is there supposed to be a longer actual timeline to this?
Cool.
I'm confused by it. I won't lie. It's the only thing that confuses me to the film, so I know.
I think the seasonality of it is very important to the lead up, because you have winter, spring, summer is when their relationship is kind of in full bloom. You have this fall sequence, and then I think there's supposed to be a little playing of how much time exists after that, because I think when you get to the Keith sequence and him becoming a part of this band called the Messengers, I think you're supposed to get the sense that then there's time, because you have to think about what they're both doing. The Messengers have to get big enough,
right?
She also has to have time to write, rehearse, produce her one-woman show. You're supposed to think that there is an amount of time.
I'm gonna go with you on that, because that's not how I felt about it. But then I was like, I don't know. I mean, I've never written a one-man show, and I've never been big in a band with John Legend yet. So
2 more things to add to your list, along with the keytar.
Right. Well, the keytar might be the key to get there.
Because that's what John Legend's been looking for. It's you know what I've been missing in my life? A keytar player.
Which speaks to, I'm gonna say it, I like the Messengers song.
You're supposed to like the Messengers.
Are you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading commentary about that because I was kind of curious, because one of the things, because with John Legend, is John Legend talked about the fact it's supposed to be a likable song, but you're supposed to understand why it's so in opposition to what Sebastian would want. That's why there's that great moment where Mia's yeah, I like it, but do you like it?
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's supposed to be, you're supposed to think that this is a song that people, I mean, it's incredibly catchy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add it to my summer jams list. But you're supposed to get the feeling that it's catchy, but like you also are to understand the tension of like, but Sebastian wants to be a jazz pianist, so this doesn't make sense. And that's why I love you get that moment of him on like the synth piano where like you can see that Mia's like very confused by what he's doing, but it's like he looks so effortlessly cool when he's doing it because he's like playing it with one hand on the keys, one hand in the pocket.
Well,
like,
that's what I was going to ask you. The next question: do you think Sebastian enjoys it?
So here's the thing. I think he enjoys performing in a way in which the energy from the audience, and I think his positioning in the band, I think he gets to let it feel a little bit like jazz, and I think you're supposed to get the understanding that Keith understands like what Sebastian needs as a musician to be invested. But I don't think that this isn't his dream coming true, because he even says, he's like, guys like me wait for years to make something that people like, and then Mia going, but you don't care what people like.
Right.
You know, that's not what your thing is. But I think you're supposed to get the sense of, like, he's proud of what he's doing. It may be not his dream, but he's proud of the work. And I think that's why you're supposed to get the sense that he's kind of so effortless on stage because of the fact that he's so talented and he is going to get into the music in the way that he needs to. And then you get a portion of this that I just don't understand. And I need someone to explain it to me. Why doesn't he go to her show? I'm skipping a little.
Okay, so are we skipping the fight?
No, we can talk about the fight.
The fight's hard. Like, I don't think we need
I don't like the fight.
To bathing it too long, but like it's so important. I mean, because I think again, this is a real credit to the writing. It's a very realistic fight.
I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah.
A lot of that was ad-libbed and added by Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling.
Wow. I mean, again, just speaks to their chemistry and how well they work together then.
Because they had to noodle with the scene a lot.
Interesting. I didn't know that, so that's really interesting to know, but it kind of... and it's what's so good about that moment is you understand both sides. Like,
100%.
Nobody's wrong and nobody's right. I mean, obviously, Sebastian starts to cut a little bit.
Because he says...
lot. Yeah.
Because he says the one thing that she did not want to hear him say.
And anybody that's ever been into, relationships, sometimes you do that cutting and you instantly regret it.
You see a little bit of the hint in his eyes of that instant regret of like, ooh, I went too far.
Yes. I think... but again, she's challenging everything. He thinks he's done everything for her. He thinks he's finally doing everything right, everything that she wants, and all of a sudden she's questioning everything. And you understand his point too. Like, it's such a hard scene. It's so important to the next moments that we're going to get, but it's like, and I think it's important because like we've been talking about, the timeline's a little bit questionable on how long. So it's all the tension into this one fight. Like, it's not this one fight that changes the course of their relationship. It's everything that's been going on and all put into this one scene. And I think it's done so well.
I know, and I completely agree with your interpretation, because I don't think you're supposed to think that this is the only time this has come. I think you're supposed to think this is just when it came to a head. Like, all of this has existed. And what makes them...
how it starts with this happy moment. Like, right? They're so happy to see each other. I mean, he's flown home for one day just to see her and surprise her. And she's just gets off the phone trying to talk to him because she misses him, to then have it all go so south.
Oh, yeah, because it's like you realize every trigger point of their relationship got distilled in one moment, and it's like, oh, okay, so that's why they have to walk away from each other.
So now your question is, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's the one moment in the movie where I'm like, I don't get it.
The only thing I can think is that he feels obligated, that he feels like, I have to do everything, otherwise I'm going to lose what I've created. I'm finally having quote unquote success, and if I stray away from that, I'm going to lose that. So he ends up looking more towards that than, and it's bad because I think I agree with you. I watched it and I go, it doesn't make any sense. Why?
Doesn't.
Because Keith doesn't seem like this horrible person.
No, Keith
seems cool.
Because he's John Jimmy. Of course he's great.
Again, one of the other small problems is I don't think they do a good job enough of explaining why, other than maybe he seems to have more success than Sebastian, and that's why there's this tension between Sebastian and him.
I do wish you get more. I wish there was more with Keith. Because I find his character compelling.
He's good, yeah. Again, I would watch a Keith movie.
Yeah. Give me a Keith movie.
But, so I don't know if that's what's going on there, but I love, so much so, the moment he realizes the mistake he made.
Yeah.
Like, it's this look that Ryan Gosling can do so well of going, what am I doing? I hate what I'm doing here. I feel like I'm a fool, and I realize I just screwed up so bad with the best thing going on in my life.
Well, yeah, because 100%, it's like you don't come back from that.
Yeah.
That's pretty dang unforgivable. Yeah. And then, like, and how...
he finds a way.
Well, yeah. But they don't end up together, though.
That's fair.
But, like, and you completely understand all of her heartache in that moment of, like, she's so... Because when he finally arrives at the theater, she's so broken by, like, this, like, dream of what Hollywood life is going to be. And she finally, like, she does the thing. She takes the big risk. She, leapt without looking. Like, and then all of a sudden... It's just this realization of, like, it doesn't matter what I do, like, I'm not going to get my shot, and then she has to go home.
I'd go see So Long Boulder City.
Of course you'd go see So Long Boulder City. It's much important. Like, but this is the thing, is, like, we all feel very sad for Mia, right? Like, we're all watch that moment, and we're like, oh, that, like, really, like, barely anyone came to her show. You can see, like, the friends are in the front row, but now, like...
Even Sebastian's sister's in the audience.
Oh, man, I missed that.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But... It's also the thing of the recognition of, like, oh, do you feel sad about that, Ice? How often do you go to your local theater productions and support the artists who are really just trying to show and make it, and they're out there hustling? Like, it's one of those, like, weird moments, and then...
and as two people that almost are essentially doing a film critique podcast, the scene that cuts at me is the scene of Mia in the dressing room after, and the two people coming by, and they're shredding her show. Yeah. And it's like, I know, like, we just naturally, when we watch something or we experience something, we have a natural way we want to talk about it and critique it. And it's like, no, every piece of art that somebody creates is genius and beautiful and should be put out into the world, and we should not destroy it.
But they definitely do, because they're like, they give the classic "Don't quit your day job" line.
Because there's a heart and a soul behind every piece of work that gets put out.
Yeah, it's no one does anything.
And they end up being wrong in the end.
Yeah, of course. But, like, so then, so we have this great scene. So she goes home, and then you have kind of, like, the grand romantic gesture of, like, Sebastian goes to pick her up because someone did see it. Someone is going to recognize, like, her art. And then you get the scene that I think, without a doubt, is why Emma Stone wins the Oscar. She goes into an audition, and they say, tell us a story. And then... she tells the story of, like, her aunt who's inspired her. She's talked about her aunt throughout, the entire film of, like, how, like, her aunt taking her to the library to, like, rent movies, like, old movies, her aunt being part of a theater troupe. You understand that the aunt died young. We don't really know how. There's a hint in the song towards it, but we're not really sure if that's how she dies. And they tell her story, and she then breathes into existence this incredible, heart-wrenching monologue. Emma Stone performed that, I think, 15 times. Somewhere 14 or 15 times. She sang it live. So what you're seeing is actually the recording on the soundstage. Nice. There was a person playing the piano in the other room, and then it was piped into her ear so she could hear it, and then she was saying, because Damien Chazelle wanted it to be as raw and expressive as possible, and for her to have ultimate control over what this sounded like. So instead of her playing to something pre-recorded, he wanted the full force of the emotion. And it's there. If you want to understand why Emma Stone is so incredibly beloved and famous, and why she won the Oscar, and you've never seen this movie, just watch that scene. And I think even without context to the film, you can understand why that scene is so important.
I completely agree. I think she's just absolute top of her game in that moment. I mean, that is your Hollywood moment that she gives, and her Oscar-winning moment. I 100% agree with you. And you feel every note that comes out of her.
And I think also her monologue forecasts why the film ends the way it does. Like, it's, so there's, so we've been talking throughout this, like, there's the tension between our dreams and our reality, and, do they ever completely combine? And, is it okay to dwell in one and not the other? Like, is it okay to dwell in my dreams and not deal with reality, and vice versa? Is it also, the great John Legend line earlier in the film where he says, like, how can you be a revolutionary when you're such a traditionalist? And I feel like these arguments are kind of coming to fruition at the end of, like, the tension that exists between this era we call classic old Hollywood cinema. How much do we have to keep referencing back to something that happened in the 1940s and 50s? But how much should we honor something that really gave rise to this art form that we all so enjoy? And then additionally, like, how much am I supposed to innovate, but also how much do I like seeing? Because they talk about that with the earlier sequence for someone in the crowd. There's a lot of reference in the choreography to Fosse, but also they wanted to pull back from that too, because they didn't want it just to feel like a Fosse number. They wanted it to feel fresh and original and vibrant and new and modern. So how do we do this thing where we say, let's honor what was there, but let's push forward and innovate? And I feel like La La Land is actually a really great bridge movie exactly for that. It gives you kind of, it pats your head if you're someone who likes old classic Hollywood cinema and gives you things that feel safe and comfortable. But I also think, particularly with this ending sequence, it gives you something that pushes you a little forward, because what you have here is the fruition. Like, so the song is, To the Fools Who Dream. That's exactly what Sebastian and me are. It's exactly why they can't end up together, because they have to follow their dreams. Their dreams are the thing that they're actually in love with. They're always going to love each other, but I think you understand by that moment when they're at the bench and say, I'm always going to love you. I'm always going to love you like a friend, I think, more. I'm always going to love for what you meant in my life at this moment. But my thing that I need to do is really my dream. My dream is not this relationship. My dream is becoming a famous actress. My dream is becoming, an owner of a jazz club. And those things are a little bit more what we have to pursue. We have to be the fools who dream and not the ones who just, exist in this reality of this feels like a solid relationship.
I feel like anything I say after that is going to ruin how perfect you put it. Yeah, I mean, you were speaking so much truth there. It is exactly what this film's about, and what, Jamie and Giselle is trying to say. I agree with you. I think maybe even going back to the question you had, why does Sebastian not go to Mia's show? Because I think what you said, he was following his dream, and that in this meant more. He didn't mean to crush Mia in doing it, but that's what he believed he was trying to go for. Because ultimately in this whole film, it's about the compromises we make in trying to find dreams, the sacrifices, but also the courage to find them. And that courage for these two people is, despite how much they love each other, they love two things more. And Sebastian's saying, I got to go my own path. Like, he's got to follow, like, they know that that's going to be him, but they needed each other. They needed each other to push. Sebastian's the one that encourages her to make the one-man show that, we talk about these moments in your life and the relationships and the moments and the stories you create and how you follow these paths, and you can kind of look back and say, like, well, this doesn't happen, then this doesn't happen. And,
yeah.
And Sebastian holds that for Mia. He is the heart and the excitement and the dreamer that she's starting to feel, that she's jaded. Yeah. She needs his intensity and excitement and encouragement to say, as he quotes it, like, fuck him. Like, to keep chasing that dream.
Yeah. Pishikaka.
Yeah. Which she does. And she needs to keep him on course to go, you are so talented, this is your passion, this is what you need to keep following.
Well, because he's stuck in this,
Don't lose your dream.
Yeah, he's stuck in this closed loop where I don't want jazz to die, so I'm going to play traditionalist jazz, but if I play traditionalist jazz, I'm never going to get a stage job. If I can't get a stage job, I can't get my jazz club. If I can't get my jazz club, then jazz dies. And he's in this, like, closed loop, and she breaks the loop and goes, because he thinks he needs to, but it actually is like the helpful direction, because you get the sense of like playing with the messengers for 5 years is what got you enough capital and enough clout to get your own club,
Right.
and name it Sebs. Like, it's
and still, again, right, paying tribute to how you got there. Like, he doesn't call it chicken on a stick.
No.
He calls it Sebs because he knows...
It's a cooler name.
What, Sebs?
Sebs.
Well, yeah, of course. You got that note?
Yeah.
That
Is that a little note on the apostrophe?
I couldn't find the quote to say here, unfortunately. Barry Jenkins, who, won Best Picture over La La Land for Moonlight, which we talked about earlier, he had a great quote about La La Land.
Oh.
Because a lot of people kind of insinuated that maybe La La Land was a little more fluff, and that his film was more dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
And he really spoke poetically about this movie and the ending. And he talked about the bravery and courage of that ending, because we don't see that. Like, these are two people that are in love. There's no question.
No.
They're good for each other. But they need to sacrifice that love to keep pushing forward. And that and he just talked so much about how intensely amazing that choice is, and how it's this sad and joyful at the same time ending. Like, I wish I had found the quote, but unfortunately that quote came before the Oscars debacle. So when you try to find Barry Jenkins La La Land quotes
that's not what's coming out. Yeah.
You're getting just everything that came
Different
after.
story, yeah. But I think that, that's such an important note to think about this film, because I was in that camp. I watched this film and I loved it, and I was rooting for these two characters, and the first time I watched it, and I listen, it doesn't comfort me to admit this, but I had a hard time with the ending, because I was like, no, they're supposed to be together. Like, and and listen, that is the privilege of feeling like you got your Hollywood ending. You got to have the love of your life. Well, I want everybody to have that. Why aren't they ending up together? That ain't right. Like, but then rewatching it and going, oh no, they're not supposed to. Because it's not about that. This is a movie that is about those individual, it's important that the film starts in their individual cars. It's about their individual dreams and about that space they want to get to. And that wanting that is not selfish. It's the thing you must do. You must be willing to sacrifice for the things you really want in life. And you can't let anything hold you back, because
you gotta follow the spark inside you.
Exactly. No, 100%. Well said. Like, and that's why I think it's so beautiful. So Damien Chazelle said there's then there's the ending sequence, so this is 5 years later. We get that great moment of her going into the coffee shop. It's shot the same way, only her golf cart is pointing in a different direction, which I thought was an interesting choice. So she's getting 2 iced coffees, and then we get to see her in her life. She has a child. She's married to Tom Everett Scott, and I found out my most favorite thing about this movie, just so you know. So you and I have talked length about this. We said, why Tom Everett Scott? Because he's, a known name. It's really interesting. He pops up at the end of the movie. There's this, age disparity. I always assumed it was supposed to be either maybe, the director of that first film. Mm-hmm. That's kind of was the narrative I had in my head. And he was cast for a very important reason. Because Damien Chazelle is a huge fan of That Thing You Do, and because his character in That Thing You Do is obsessed with jazz, he wanted Tom Everett Scott to play the husband at the end.
Love it. That's awesome.
Tom Everett Scott didn't audition. Damien Chazelle contacted him and said, I want you for this part. It's at the end of the movie. And he told him, it's because I love you in That Thing You Do, and I love that movie. And that's why I want you in it. And so Ryan will understand why this is significant. I have a deep affinity for the movie That Thing You Do. It's definitely up there in my films, and I love his character in That Thing You Do, so I think it's kind of perfect that...
I am Spartacus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stitch, give them what they want. It's so... Oh, wait, he says, come on, Shades, give them what they want. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's just I thought that was a fun little fact. And then, they happen upon Sebs, they go in. I love how Emma Stone plays that moment.
Yes.
Of what do I do here?
She conveys confusion and excitement, pride, and kind of sadness all in one.
Because I don't think in the ending you're supposed to think she's at all sad with how her life ended up. She seems phenomenally happy. He seems, but there's this longing of that, exactly that sequence we get. What would have been. would have been if we had stayed together? How would this have been differently? What does this look like if this is more of a quote-unquote Hollywood ending with everything wrapped up in a bow and me and Sebastian end up together? What does that version of this look like?
Well, that's what so genius about what they give you. They give you both endings for the audience, right? They give you what everybody expected and wanted, and you're rooting for through the entire time, and they give you that in that sequence, which is so wonderfully shot, but also the more reality. And I agree with you. I don't think ever at any point you're supposed to think that either of them regret it. I think what they're both they had such a connection, and to see each other after that time, all those emotions run back for a moment. And I think, and it's, you lost a friend and because these aren't two people that really broke up in a bad way. They just had to go their separate ways.
Amicable.
Yeah. So I think that's just,
And then I love you get that sequence. And Damien Chazelle's actually said of this. He's like, why can't both realities exist in the same plane? Why can't it be both? Why can't it be that they both ended up together and didn't? And that's why that sequence exists.
I love that sequence. It's one of my favorite endings ever. And I'm with you. I didn't hit 100% to me the first time I saw it. I had to see it a second viewing, which you and I, if you remember, we saw it in the theater early in Oscar.
Yes.
When it first came out. We enjoyed it, but and it needed to simmer a little bit. We ended up seeing it the day before the Oscars because we went back and rewatched it, and it just was like, no, that was the movie that hit. And I mean, you or beyond, like, I love it. I love it a lot. I mean, you have a fandom for it that's crazy, stupid, loving.
All right, so how are you working in Gangster Squad? That's my question. I love this movie deeply. I think, it's funny. We sat down to watch it, and I barely wrote notes. I write voraciously with my notes. I barely have a few pages because I couldn't. I kept watching and just obsessing over every detail. It's so perfect. It's so beautiful. I love that it gets to have this kind of great moment in Oscars history, or great flub, I guess, in Oscars history, depending, how you want to view that. I love how incredibly alive this film feels. It's so intentional. It's so alive. It's so effortless. It's everything I want in a movie. It takes me to really incredible spaces. It's dreamlike, but I love the setting of LA. I mean, give me a movie about LA any day of the week and I'm going to want to watch it. It's just such a perfect movie. I truly, truly love this movie. It's going to be hard for me ever to declare favorite movie and say it's done. I'm always going to have a hard time with that. Maybe one day I'll get there, but I mean, this is in the running and there's a strong case to make for it. And we're almost 2 hours deep on this episode, and I feel like we started 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. We can just keep talking, and
I would.
But there's so much to talk about. It's so well done. Yeah. Again, why would it not be one of your all-time, if not your all-time favorite movie? Again, it's a love letter to Hollywood. You have two just likable, just amazing actors who, again, are kind of transcend time. You could put them in any era and they're going to work and they're going to be they are movie stars. It's musical and it's romance. It's about chasing dreams. It is everything you want in a film, and I think that's probably why it took a second the first time, because you're a romantic.
Oh, hopeless romantic.
So, when you didn't get necessarily that ending that you expected, it took a moment for you to have to wrap your head around that. But I think after time, you saw the beauty in it. And because this is a movie about a happy ending, that should not be lost here.
No, because it is. It's a beautifully happy.
These are two people that are happy and doing exactly what they wanted in their lives.
Living their dream.
You're not to think that these are people that missed out, and there's not regret. And that's the point, and that last shot of them just smiling at each other. It's a mutual understanding of, I love you, I needed you, and I wish you well. Yeah. It is all in that just smile to each other. And it is so good. And that's why...
Sorry, is this one of your favorite movies?
No, but I'm saying, I get why you would pick this, and I get why this would be, your, top. Kind of, if you don't mind, me kind of putting a bow on it. I mean, this movie is so steeped in its musical aspects and its songs. popular. Benji Pasek, Justin Paul.
Yep.
Two greats. One day we'll have maybe an EGOT. I don't know if you can get an EGOT for songwriting.
You can.
Yeah. Again, Dear Evan Hansen, they wrote the songs for that. They did music. Do you have a favorite song?
Don't make me pick. All right, so are you saying favorite song or favorite sequence, like musical sequence in the film?
I'm going to say song in this case.
Okay, because my answer
if you were just in the radio and you wanted to put on a song from La La Land, what do you put it on?
Another Day of Sun.
Okay, makes sense.
Makes me so happy.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to flip it. What's the sequence?
A Lovely Night.
Gotcha.
I love the choreography in that sequence. You were very lovely. I made you recreate, because I have the La La Land, the yellow dress, and I made you recreate one of the shots from that.
Yeah.
Some really, very kind French tourists took that
she
photo.
was wonderful.
I'm gonna post
Even
that
she was like, no, that's not the shot.
Yeah, she was like, you don't like that. And I was like, how does she know? Okay, nice French lady, please, yes, retake our photo.
Yeah, she was great. It's a great, I won't lie, it's one of my favorite shots of us. I'm not going to pretend like it isn't.
The lighting was in our favor.
I was a little against,
you were.
A little person with anxiety, to put me on display there was a little bit, it's a cool shot that I'm happy that we have.
Yes.
I won't lie.
Yeah, and it's just, there's something, so it's interesting. Another Day of Sun just, it fills me with a lot of joy and just, happiness, and, it's to me, if you've ever seen the Muppets movie, the one with Jason Segel, the Life's a Happy Song.
Yeah.
Life's a Happy Song and Another Day are just those songs I can, listen to, just, instantly put me in a really good mood, and I feel like are, the internal, nature of my headspace, when I really, want to, be, super
I'm sure Damien Chazelle is glad that you picked a Muppet song.
It's a great Muppet song!
That's true. I'm Man or Muppet myself.
We all know. But, there's just something about, A Lovely Night just feels like such an incredible sequence. The cinematography is beautiful. Listen, I'm a sucker for anyone who can do a good long take. So I really appreciate that sequence. It's interesting, any of the songs, Audition definitively has a special place in my heart. I don't think I've ever gotten through that scene without crying.
Do you have any last things you want to say about this movie before, I have a couple of small things I want to wrap up with, but to kind of close out the La La Land of it all.
I love this movie. Let's book our tickets to LA because I really want to go. Also, this film felt like a real treat. I think I don't know. It's feeling like it might be my favorite movie. It's just how I'm talking. Even I'm hearing myself, I'm like, you really
You put it on audio out there. It's now. It's it.
No, I didn't say it.
Beats it.
I didn't say it. But it's definitely up there. If you're at an hour and 50 of this and you haven't ever seen La La Land, please go watch La La Land. It's movie musicals, I think, are a really beautiful lost art form. I think since that quote unquote classic era of them, I think there are a few films that have really gotten it right. And I think La La Land is at the top of that list of films that really can make a case for why movie musicals can be something that can move into the next era of filmmaking.
Okay, so I'm going to have a couple quick questions to close this out for your big birthday episode. But
go for it.
La La Land. So usually at this point we would do our recasting. Not going to do a recasting. It's a pretty new film. But I'm going to do the what if.
Oh.
This movie famously had a different actress attached to it.
I do know that.
Miss Emma Watson.
Yep.
Do you think it's still as successful if she plays it?
No.
Okay.
I love Emma Watson. In her post-Harry Potter career. She's not this role. She's not Mia.
Yeah, I mean, she's.
I think there are other actresses
in movies like The Bling Ring and thing, but I don't know if But to be fair, maybe she would have surprised us. She ends up choosing Beauty and the Beast and to go all in on that because she talked about how much she would have to give to herself to do this film. So that's a reason why she didn't feel like she could give both the complete 100% that they needed.
And Ryan Gosling turned down playing the Beast in Beauty and the Beast to be in this movie.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it worked out for everybody, except for maybe Dan Stevens, who was the Beast in Beauty and the Beast.
Fair.
Very interesting. Okay. Top 3 Ryan Gosling performances, not counting La La Land.
Wait, so I have to have 3 without La La Land?
Without La La Land. We 2 hours in, we all know La La Land's your top Ryan Gosling performance.
All right, so here, I'm going to go from the bottom. I'm going to go number 3, Murder by Numbers.
I was hoping you didn't say it because I was going to put it on my list.
Ah!
So you're going performance, not film, right?
Yeah, performance.
Okay, I'm with you 100%.
Number 2, Lars and the Real Girl.
Excellent.
Are these yours too?
So far.
Number 1, The Nice Guys. Are you serious?
I'd have a little bit of a different order,
right,
but yes, I'm totally with you. I would say Lars and the Real Girl is number 1.
Okay.
I would say I was actually going to put Nice Guys number 2. Number 3 to me was Be the Big Short, which I really love.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then I was going to give some props to Murder by Numbers because you and I both, that was when you went, oh, that's a movie star in there. This movie's not that good, but he's a star.
He's so terrifying in that movie. You want bad things to happen to him in that movie.
Especially though, one of our favorite scenes ever with him is Remember the Titans.
I mean, this one, right?
He's doing the dance in
They're
the dorm
gonna
room.
put me in the movies.
So, all right, Lauren. Here we are. Finish out this episode. It's your big birthday episode. In 1 minute or less, I want you to tell me, you're sitting down on your birthday evening, you can have 3 movies to pick. What 3 are you picking? Okay. They don't have to be your favorites. They just have to be the 3 movies you're like, no, I want to watch that on my birthday for whatever reason. Like for me, I picked Ghostbusters and Masters of the Universe this last year.
Okay.
And I stand by both.
So this is really challenging because I love all the things and this puts a lot of pressure. But I think I've got my 3. So my first one is 13 going on 30 because it's a birthday movie.
It is completely.
And it makes me happy and it's so fantastic and silly and probably logistically makes no sense, but it just makes me really happy. And I love Jennifer Garner's performance in it and she's such a dang treasure. So definitely that. My second movie I would probably watch would be Clueless. I know we did an episode about this, so everyone knows how much I love Clueless, but because it just makes me, it's all my 90s nostalgia vibes. And I love that movie and it just makes me smile and happy. And then I think the third one, this one's going to be weird because I don't think you really know this about me. So there was a movie that I watched, I would say once a week when I was in high school, legitimately. My really good friend Kara and I, we were obsessed with it. We would quote it all the time to each other. And it happened to be the number 1 movie the week I was born. Oh. And that movie is Top Gun.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Did not see that coming.
It just, sorry, when you asked the question, it popped in my head because I always liked that was the number 1 movie the week I was born.
How young are you?
The question is, how old are you?
That's a fair question.
So Top Gun was like one of those movies that like, I don't know how it started, but just became this like weird like obsession comfort movie during high school. And I would watch it like all the time. I wouldn't even like have necessarily been like, well, I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan. No, I just really love Top Gun.
Did you watch the whole movie or just the volleyball scenes?
You know, what happened between me and my VHS player is between me and my VHS player.
Fair. It's a fair question.
I like the flying sequences. I don't like when Goose dies. That really bums me out.
Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to see Dr. Green.
Yeah. Oh, that is him. Oh, gosh.
Well, all right. It's time to play Great Balls of Fire and close this epic episode
Hey, Goose, you big stud! All right, on that note, so if you're not following us on Instagram, follow us at How Could You Podcast. If you're not following us on Twitter, follow us at How Could You Pod. We'll post any updates when the new season will begin. I'll still be maybe throwing in some cocktails. I just did a cocktail for the amusement park, a really lighthearted cocktail for not a lighthearted movie. But we'll be back soon, so make sure you're following those spots. Make sure you are subscribed so you get all the notifications for when we drop new episodes.
Yeah, again, keep lookout. The horror series will be coming. We're hoping maybe August, maybe September, maybe 2022. I don't know. It's coming at some point. Season 3 will be back in September. Until then, happy birthday to Lauren. Have a great summer, everybody. Until next time, enjoy the Odyssey.